My name tag is right here, so apparently I have to sit up here by myself. Yeah, well, I'll be up, and he'll be,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be up.
the other presenters tonight?
So they're listed there. So Kevin Carroll and Todd Crosset.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah, I know. Kevin Carroll's the first class.
Okay.
But I don't know the other guy or what he really does.
Um, who I think
No, I just saw. I'll see you up there. I'm gonna shoot that off.
We got a soft copy. You know, when I handle the lights. That's what opens up.
If you don't want to start them in,
Hmm?
if you don't want to start them, right there.
You know, 'cause really the spelling.
Okay. All right.
Right? The last
Oh.
acknowledgement or celebration.
And that's how they think they
No, just change this. Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it's tab like they because it'll come up. And plug in Katalyst. On the side. That was Katalyst.
Sarah, how you doing, buddy?
Come on down to the front if you like. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. All right, all right. Okay, so my name is Dr. Brent Smith. I'm the acting associate director of the Pedro Uribe Center for Business Ethics. As you know, tonight begins the first night of our 10th anniversary week of celebration. So 10 represents a very important number of completion, so we're very excited to start this off and to have you join us. So as you know, we're all here to hear about sport and play, agents for social change, and we have the honor of welcoming two very important people, two very interesting speakers, Kevin Carroll, a class of 95, founder of Kevin Carroll Katalyst, and then also Todd Crosset, associate professor of sport management from UMass Amherst. So before we get into our program, I just want to remind you that we have, following tonight, two other nights of speakers. So tomorrow we will hear from Mr. Stephen Ritz, founder of Green Bronx Machine, on the topic Food for Change, Youth, Schools, and Social Entrepreneurship. And then Wednesday we will hear from Alan Murray, editor of Fortune, and an alumnus, Jim McTague, contributing editor for Barron's, on the topic Business Ethics, What's Really Happening at the World's Leading Companies. We're also quite pleased to share with you that this is part of our Carfagno lecture series. Okay, so thank you, Carfagno family. All right. So with no further delay, I, again, just reiterate my welcome to you. We're really happy to see this room nearly full. So we have some undergraduate students. Raise your hands, please. Yay. We have some executive MBA students I see in here. Raise your hands, please. We have a few professors in this room. Raise your hands, please. All right, and we've got our dean and associate dean, Dean D'Angelo and associate dean Zervanos. Okay, good. So it's important, I go through this because, a lot of different publics are here because this kind of stuff matters. And we wanted to feature this week just some examples of how ethics intersects with so many aspects of our everyday lives. So sport being one of them for tonight. So I now have the pleasure of introducing to you my colleague from the Department of Marketing, Professor Stephanie A. Trice, who also is a faculty fellow of the Pedro Uribe Center, both for teaching and for research. So, Professor Trice, if you'll join us.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and welcome, everyone. Tonight's program, this night, is a partnership between the Uribe Center and the Sport Marketing Club. It ends the Sport Marketing speaker series on sport for social change and social justice, but it begins the Uribe Center's Business Ethics 10th Anniversary Week of Celebration. On behalf of the Sport Marketing Club, we are honored to open the week-long celebration, so thank you. Tonight's speakers were chosen because their life's work aligns with our Jesuit principles. You will be challenged tonight to understand the ethical dimensions of sport in your personal and, for some, professional lives. You will need to examine and reflect on your own values, attitudes, and beliefs. So please join me in leaning in with an open heart and an open mind. Our first speaker, Dr. Todd Crosset, was my sports sociologist professor when I was a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts. He was a colleague when I taught there, and he will forever be my mentor and family. Dr. Crosset was an All-American swimmer at the University of Texas, an assistant director, athletic director at Dartmouth College, and head coach of swimming at Northeastern University, while also earning his PhD in sociology from Brandeis University. Today, Dr. Crosset is an associate professor in the Mark H. McCormack Department of Sport Management in the Isenberg School of Management at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. There, he teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in sport sociology, sport management, and history of sport. He also has taught sport ethics. He also holds the titles of Director of Undergraduate Programs and Director of Honors for the Sport Management Department. Trained as a sociologist, Dr. Crosset has been writing, teaching, and researching the topics of race and gender in American sport for 25 years. He has written an award-winning book on the Ladies Professional Golf Tour. His articles on race and sport have been published in the Journal of Issues in Intercollegiate Athletics, the International Journal of the History of Sport, and the International Review for the Sociology of Sport. In July of this past year, Dr. Crosset was invited to Geneva, Switzerland, to address an ad hoc committee of the Office of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights on the topics of racism in North American sport. Dr. Crosset tonight will share with us the substance of his presentation to the ad hoc committee of the United Nations and some of his meditations on the power of athlete activism. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Crosset. You're welcome.
All right, we're good. from beginning. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's show it. All right.
I want to thank Professor Trice for inviting me and for Professor Smith and the good folks at the Root Day Center for making the arrangements possible. I bring greetings from the University of Massachusetts, which is the home of the W.E.B. Du Bois papers and the archives. It was Du Bois who said at the turn of the last century, if we don't deal with race this century, we'll be dealing with race in the next century. Here we are. And yet, we live in very interesting times. The last couple of years, events have occurred in the United States that have made us more open to thinking about race, and thinking about race in new ways. So I'm quite honored to be here to speak in front of the St. Joe's community regarding racism in sport. I want to start tonight's talk with two personal stories to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, and a little idea about how racism works. First story comes from my neighborhood. I live in a racially mixed neighborhood, and I sometimes run at the local college track. And on this day, I was doing 400s, interval sets. Never really happy to do that. And after I warmed up, two African-American men came and joined me on the track. And one guy was in long pants and a do-rag and Timbs, and I was surprised that he started to take off and jog around the track. Well, I did my first quarter, and he was still running around the track. He was doing like 3/4 and halves, getting in shape, and the other guy was helping him along. And I started my second quarter, and I passed him. And before I know it, he had caught up to me. And we entered the turn, and he was running shoulder to shoulder to me, and he says to me, "Can't let the OG beat me." And I just cracked up. But we ran shoulder to shoulder, pushed along by his ironic compliment. Second story I call Getting Old's Not for Wimps. Recently, I took my 88-year-old mother to the airport, put her on a plane to go to Paris, where she's to meet my sister. She's flying by herself. Now, airports are great places to prove you're not a wimp. As Professor Trice once said to me, getting old is not for wimps, and my mother was not going to be a wimp, and she decided she was going to walk. Because airports are also great places to pull the age card, right? You get wheelchairs pulled out in front of you. People can come incredibly patient. You can, I mean, it's like those animals at the mall now that you can ride. Old people can go to the airport and they get pushed around all over the place. But my mother's not a wimp, and she was going to walk. We got to security, and there's a sign above security that said, "Wait 27 minutes." And I could see that line curling around. And I knew she can stand for 27 minutes, but that would be about it. She'd be toast by the time she got through that x-ray, and it would be a real long walk to the gate. So I pulled the age card. I walked up to security. I said, "My mother's 88 years old," and that was it. He raised that ribbon barrier, and he joked with me. He said, "She can come, but you can got to stand in line." And it was all very pleasant. My mother started to trudge off to the x-ray machine, and then he said, "Buddy, next time, get the wheelchair. Because, you know, there'll be 5 black guys in line, and they'll be coming up, and they'll be saying, we see how it is. You let the white lady in, but what about us?" And I was dumbfounded. I was frozen in my tracks. And I waved my mother on some more, and I realized I wasn't prepared for that comeback. I wasn't prepared to give a response. Professor Trice no doubt would have had a comeback. She would have had some verbal, swashbuckling, brain-frying comment for this guy, but I didn't have it. That part of my brain, or is it my soul, is slow. untrained on a life of privilege. Now, it's disturbing that this overt racist encounter happened in public space. Sort of was prepared for that, more prepared for that on the back nine or in the backyard. But what's ever more disturbing is it's a clear illustration of white privilege. Not that subtle, unnoticed comfort we white people enjoy every day, but the we're on the same team, us versus them, I got you, buddy, kind of white privilege. You see, I know in my head, but I have not fully incorporated that that security guard and I are on the same team. It doesn't matter that some of my students call me a race traitor. It doesn't matter that some of my students declare me an honorary black. It doesn't matter that that guy on the track bestowed upon me the honorable title of OG. As I walk this earth and long after I pass from it, I'm on that security guard's team. And as long as I'm not confrontational, I'm a team player, participating in the denial of black folks' full humanity. That's how racism works. The activist and sports scholar Harry Edwards says, sport inevitably recapitulates the character, the structure, the dynamics of human and institutional relationships within and between societies. That's very important that he uses the word recapitulates. He does not say, oh, sport is a reflection of society. Sport is not a mirror of society. Sport's unique structures, practices, re-expresses and gives new form and character to the structure and the ideologies of our culture. Racism is recapitulated through sport. I tell my students at UMass that sport is a particular salient way of understanding racism for three reasons. First, sport is necessarily about the body. And race, that specious categorization of people based on biological attributes, false categorizations of people based on biological attributes for the purpose of establishing and nurturing power and privilege, is also about body. Any discussion of race and sport, it is critical that we recognize that each of us comes to know the world through our bodies. Surely as sight, smell, language shape our knowledge, so does movement and touch. Touch, Aristotle told us, is the most important sense. It's the only sense in which you are both aware of others and yourself at the same time. This is why the handshake is so important in business. Just reach out right now and shake the hand of the person next to you. Or just put your hand on the shoulder of the person next to you. In that moment, you feel yourself and someone else. Right? You can't do that with sight. You can't do that with hearing. Now, this is important, and particularly important for any discussion of racism. Because through somatic knowledge, through bodily knowledge, we come to appreciate personhood, our own and others. The philosopher Kearney says that to be fully human is to touch and be touched. And racism is the denial of the humanity of a full person. It's dehumanizing. So although race is a social construction, and you've all been taught that, and you know that, and it sort of rolls off your tongue now. Race is a social construction and not a biological fact. It is nonetheless embodied. We carry our racial identities deep. Structures and practices in our society don't change simply by trying to change the way people think or the way they see the world. How we live, whom we live with, how we dance and whom we dance with and work with and play with has consequences for our understanding of race. Changes in perception requires changes in how the body is lived in the world. Second, sport is necessarily conflictual. And racism is conflictual. Well, some people say, oh, sport, it's just a game. And it is just a game. And we all understand that it's just a game. It's fundamental to sport that we take it seriously. To do otherwise, to be dishonest, to not play your hardest, is to be a spoil sport. That we know we are playing or watching people play does not make the conflict trivial. Every episode, every game, every encounter in sport is an opportunity for peacemaking. It's also a threat for the opposite. And finally, sport matters because it's a unique form of entertainment. It invites us into the game with the promise that fans, if they cheer hard enough, if they flap their wings long enough, they will have an impact on the outcome of the game. That they matter. The audience matters. It's entertainment flipped upside down. And it's a spectacle. So while fans are actively engaged in it, they are also judgmental of it. Combination of judgmental, active engagement with a spectacle of physical conflict provides an environment ripe for racist things to be said, felt. It's because of these three unique aspects that sport recapitulates rather than reflects our society and its supportive ideologies. Now, it bears remembering that racism interacts with other factors, issues of access, deferential treatment, and discrimination. So when you think about soccer and European soccer fans throwing bananas on the field these days, it's intersecting with the construction of masculinity through rude and semi-criminal acts, right? My discussion tonight, I'm going to focus on two themes. That was in my title. I'm going to focus on two themes that are uniquely American themes, and that is amalgamation and white supremacy. And the historian David Hollinger argues that a central feature to American history is that of amalgamation, the coming together, the mixing of various races, ethnicities. However, ours is one of amalgamation interruptus. And maybe we're in a period of that. That is, irregular, stutter steps, tension-filled, sometimes violent process of races and ethnicities and religions coming together. But nonetheless, over 100-year gaze, we can argue that religious, ethnic, race mixing is a central feature of American society. Another persistent theme is white supremacy. The insidious lie of white exceptionalism, white moral superiority, white privilege. And I'm not referring to the loud, awful stuff. I'm referring to the stuff that's just the everyday things here. The comfort that white folks enjoy of being a part of the standard by which all others are judged and which we think others should aspire. The recapitulation of America's sometimes contradictory values of white supremacy and amalgamation in sport is illustrated in the post-World War II era of integration. You know, the Jackie Robinson stories, the Jesse Owens stories, these heroic figures that helped to establish our country as something other than Nazi Germany. Sports world brought folks of color in, tore down the color barrier and brought folks of color in. But this form of integration didn't come with a sense of racial justice. There were no truth and reconciliation commissions. There were no reparations. It was merely an end to the color bar. The form and the fashion of integration in American sport decimated black sport organizations that had arisen during the Jim Crow era. So the Negro Leagues in baseball, but also black golf and black tennis organizations faded. And the sport integration post-World War II provided a roadmap for the rest of America. White communities, businesses, schools took in the best and the brightest, took in the Jackie Robinsons from the black community. Opportunities were offered to those who could fit in and excel to similar impact. Enticing the most talented African Americans to be participants in white society resulted in the bifurcation of the black community. It left the urban core without professional class and a smaller middle class. The process over time weakened black institutions that provided stability. This method of integration also, and this is what's important, particularly for folks in this room, this method of integration that old folks did, right? Your parents did. This method of integration provided abdication for whites. Let us off the hook. That some people of color could make it demonstrated that as a group, whites were not responsible for the disparate racial outcomes in our society. White America was able to pat itself on the back for becoming a multiracial society and blame people of color for inequality. Today, we're dealing with the consequences of that form of integration. We've become a society with few admitted racists, yet profoundly racialized outcomes. I'm going to take that thought and move it forward into sport. I'm going to talk about 3 issues that I see that are important in sport right now, and issues that I would hope that the young people in this room would be dealing with as they move forward. The first I want to deal with is the racial segregation of American youth sport. Okay. One outcome of a society that with few admitted racists, yet profoundly racialized outcomes is resegregation. Once the centerpiece of the civil rights movement, today our primary and secondary schools are increasingly segregated. The vast majority of white students attend majority white schools. And in my region of the country, over half the black students attend schools that are 90 to 100% non-white. Whites tend to reframe the current resurgence of racial segregation as natural and unproblematic. We convince ourselves that we move to better schools for our children, for a better neighborhood, for a bigger house, or that we place our children in private schools because we want what's best for them. But very rarely do we say to ourselves, oh, maybe this is about race. America's voluntary segregation is recapitulated in the youth sports, demonstrated in these videos from my home. Almost without exception, my current students tell me their youth club sport teams were less diverse than their classrooms. The racial segregation within youth sport is an amplification of America's racial divide and recapitulates the sentiment that cross-race experiences are no longer a priority for white folks. This phenomenon is propelled by the business of youth sports. What started as private training academies for elite athletes has spread across all levels. Many of you are products of that private system. As the ideology of the market solutions as superior to governmental ones, local governments' budgets shrank in the 1980s. And so did low-cost opportunities to play sport via park and rec teams. Private entrepreneurial youth sport organizations have filled that gap. Between club fees, equipment, the business of youth sports now generates tens of billions of dollars in revenues. Families, particularly suburban families, spend thousands of dollars annually for children to participate in recreational sport. Where in my generation, we played for the cost of a t-shirt. And apparently for just about everybody in Philadelphia of my generation, they snuck into gyms and tracks, and because that's a story I hear over and over. There's evidence to suggest that this new privatization of youth sports is facilitating participation along class lines. To the extent to which it's doing that along race lines, it's not clearly understood yet. But what is clear is private organizations do not share the sport for all, for the good of the community approach of local governments. I find this voluntary segregation in sport problematic because it naturalizes and affirms the racial differences, and because it undermines the anti-racist potential of sport. Through sport, we come together in intimate, physical, and passionate ways. Mixed-raced youth teams offer an avenue to understanding race, counter-narratives about race that few other activities offer us. There's no guarantee that a mixed-race team will lead to increased racial tolerance and understanding. So much depends upon context and leadership and all that other stuff. But surely mixed-race teams offers anti-racist potential, far more potential than do hyper-segregated youth teams do. So here's some things I think you can think about. You know, and you can think about it in terms of institution, you can think about it in terms of your own sphere of influence, but we need to affirm the possibility that sport offers counter-narratives to dominant ideas. We should be providing guidelines. We should be providing direction for youth sport programs on how to be multiracial. And we should be encouraging governing bodies, maybe by denying them their tax breaks, if they don't take anti-racism as a core mission. Second thing I want to talk about here is mascot debates. And I'm not going to go into this into great detail, but I just want to say when I went to Europe to give this talk, I had to preface this talk, this part of my talk, because from afar, this debate that we're having in this country seems pretty silly. The United Nations has already declared through indigenous people should not have stereotypes imposed upon them, and they should be free to define themselves. And they also know that players change teams all the time. You can be a lion one day and a tiger the next, and it has no detrimental effect. And they also are pretty clear that we keep changing our team names, you know, Bobcats, Hornets, Highlanders, Yankees, you know, we do it all the time. And so they say, why don't you just get rid of that Native American stuff? What's the deal with Chief Wahoo? Why do you hold on to him? So that's what's important here, is we need to figure out, why are we holding on to these names? Recalcitrant organizations, communities, and owners seem to me are motivated by their need to protect their sense of self. No one wants to admit that the things they hold dear could also cause harm, particularly if it's perpetuating racism. Nonetheless, over the last 30 years, slowly, community by community, schools, colleges, and professional teams have been switching their names, changing their names, sometimes through great efforts of local indigenous peoples. So, for me, it's important that we change these names and follow the UN's cry that we, indigenous people, have the right to determine their own identities and not to have false identities imposed upon them. But I also think it's really, really important to have the conversations. Because through that conversation, we can come to understand that racism and intention are not necessarily connected. That we come to the hard realization that racism is systemic and persists without our intention, without intention or overt hatred. And the last part I want to talk about is the collegiate sports system. And I want you to think about this in new ways. You all know this is a system of amateurs. In exchange for doing minimal academic work and representing the university, athletes get to compete against and train with some of the best young athletes in the world. They receive room and board, excellent coaching, access to world-class facilities, and access to education. For many young athletes, the U.S. college system is the best option for competing at a high level. For many, college offers them their finest athletic experience. Now, amateurism, upon which the system depends, is a vestige of the past. We're the last kind of system holding on to it. For the most part, exploitive, commercialized amateur sports have been successfully challenged. Athletes who played for their country in the Olympics, for the World Cup, in the World Cup, for example, now receive some sort of compensation beyond room and board. Obviously, there's growing concern of the exploitation of college athletes, particularly for two sports, basketball and American football. And the highest courts will be struggling with how to resolve complaints against the NCAA over the next few years. The fan appeal of college sports and basketball rivals any professional league. In 2015, college basketball's championship game had a larger audience than the NBA's sixth and final deciding game, larger than the seventh game of the World Series. College basketball, as many of you know, generates $700 million in television rights annually. These two college sports account for billions of dollars of U.S. revenue. And the crux of the debate is that athletes who play basketball and football do not receive formal payment for their labor, and the rules even deny them the ability to endorse products. And the crux of the debate is going to be, what's reasonable compensation? Right? The college system is slow to change, and the current arrangements offer too many benefits to too many stakeholders for it to change quickly. Universities benefit, professional leagues benefit, coaches benefit, administrators benefit, the media benefits, sponsors, and athletes as well. What is less acknowledged in this debate, and I suspect also contributes to the slow change, is the redistribution of resources along race lines. In our system, all athletes, no matter their popularity or the popularity of their their sport, are treated the same. A scholarship in women's swimming is pretty much the same as a scholarship in football. And this appears to be based on an ethical precept of equality. Superior facilities, the travel, the coaching for non-revenue sports is similar to revenue sports, particularly in the Big Five conferences. In the abstract, and through a lens of white supremacy, we can rationalize this system. All college athletes work hard. All are talented. They should all be rewarded. But on a practical level, this system recapitulates the redistribution of resources along race lines. It's predominantly black athletes who labor to provide elite athletic opportunities for young people from predominantly upper-class, middle-class white families. Over 60% of all Division I basketball players identify as African American. And when we watch at the elite level, the racial divide becomes even more extreme. Athletes of color on the Division I level are the majority in football. And at big-time schools, the revenue generated from the basketball and the football programs fund the non-revenue sports. Other college sports like swimming and lacrosse do not generate revenue. So with the exception of basketball and football, college athletics are disproportionately white. 90% of college athletes playing lacrosse identify as white. And it's similar to the sport of swimming and diving. And the further we go away from the elite sport, the whiter it gets. It's particularly true of Division III women's sports. My colleague, Billy Hawkins, has dubbed the college sport the new plantation. And like the old plantation, many whites fail to see the injustice and argue that basketball and football players should be grateful for the opportunities provided them. I think as a society, we're coming to an understanding that athletes should not be indentured servants to colleges, states, or nations. If spectators pay to watch, media pays to broadcast, sponsors pay to be affiliated with a sporting event, athletes should be reasonably compensated. But the moral dilemma will persist if this is how we frame the argument. While recognizing that governing bodies need to have a responsibility to provide for all sports, unless we address the structural racism in the system we come up with next will continue to exploit. I wonder if we could promote and develop college sport in a manner that ensures racial fairness and discourages a system that disproportionately benefits white athletes. If we adopted racial fairness as a point of departure, what would reasonable compensation then look like? So I want to conclude with a few comments about the athlete as activist. For the most part, athletes are passive, free-floating signifiers, props in hegemonic and counter-hegemonic narratives about our culture and about race. On occasion, moments of athletic brilliance can challenge racial assumptions. And on the individual level, with and through our moving bodies, we can disrupt our own taken for granted beliefs about race. Yet through sport, we mostly confirm the status quo. We recapitulate what's already out there. On occasion, though, athletes step up and they become activists, intentionally anti-racist actors. What do athletes bring to the discussion? Athletes, if nothing else, move very, very well. And because we come to know the world through our bodies, athletes, I expect, have some sort of understanding about the world that maybe the rest of us don't quite have. You see, in my sport, we felt the water. We didn't get in it and swim. We felt it. And runners are carried forward by their opponents. And athletes get caught up in the energy, in the environment. Our sense of what can be is not solely located in the subject. It's located in how we interact with the world and with others. Our capacity emerges between our perceiving body, other bodies, and the rest of the world. You know, there's a reason why oppressive states and oppressive cultures constrain people from going to school. But they also constrain people's movements. There's a reason for that, because that's a way to come to know the world and also understand your own potentiality. Full humanity. You know, denying people access to movement denies them full humanity. And we write about this a lot in the academy. What we don't write about is, what about the body that moves well? What does that offer us? Well, let's start with where resistance comes from. In this case, Shabazz Napier, his resistance came from hunger. It came from a feeling. It came from his gut. It came from a kid who was in touch with his body, and he said, this ain't right. I might not have the words for it, but this ain't right. I go to bed hungry. That changed the narrative around college athletics. And surely we can agree that when we move well, it empowers us. It's enlightening. It's empowering. The critical potential of an athlete perspective is particularly salient when we talk about race, for all the reasons I've said, because race is embodied. And we do not change simply by changing the way we think. White people, if we could have thought our way out of racism, we would have done it by now. If we could have talked our way out of racism, we would have done it by now. White privilege inhabits us. It is simultaneously and complexly embodied and ideological. This is why I say a change in perception requires shifts in how the body is lived in the world. Think about what happened in Missouri. It was John Butler's hunger strike that motivated a football team to sit down. It was a tweet. It was almost silent, but it was an expression that came from the soul. Or consider the NBA basketball players that confronted their owner in his racist rant, Donald Sterling's racist rant. You know, what we saw was a tepid, symbolic jerseys inside out, but what we didn't see was how it hit those players in the gut. And they said, we're not going to play. We'll go out here, we'll do this little protest, but you know what? Tell them in New York, we're thinking about sitting out. And that's what changed things. Anti-racist work requires people taking a stand, having a presence, putting a body on the line. Recent successful political events seem to confirm that. This young woman, Ariana Smith, plays basketball at Knox College, and after Michael Brown got shot in Ferguson, she, on her own, you got to look this up. The footage isn't good, but you got to look this up. On her own, stopped a basketball game in a silent protest by herself. She put her body on the line, and she was the one that changed the narrative. Putting your body on the line seems to matter, whether it's Occupy or Ferguson or Hong Kong. And it's because we are humans, and we see that, and you understand that you have another person has put themselves at risk. Consider Bree Newsom, who got tired of the talk, climbed a pole, and just took the flag down. Right? And look how she changed the narrative. Look how she changed the way we think. Perhaps we should reconsider the athlete as a resource for critical thinking. Those that move well may have particular insights. Athletes are potentially and uniquely sensitive, in touch with their personhood, such that they can help us redress the hegemony of vision and the privileging of discourse that's so much a part of the academy. Athlete activists, in their physical responses to felt racism, can help us to see that bodily knowledge interacts with other ways of knowing. It informs a person's sense of their potential and expands their critical perspective. Somatic knowledge can help us to identify injustice and spark resistance. You see, our gut is a resource for understanding and addressing racism, as long as we're open to hearing it. Or should I say, if we are willing to be moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Crosset, for your talk. Thank you for putting your body at risk, your research at risk, making us feel a little uncomfortable, but I hope allowing us to look at our core values and reflect on what you've said. So we appreciate that.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, I've been given the go-ahead. I have about 3 pages of an introduction for our next speaker, but he told me no. And so I'm a good listener. So I'm not going to tell you about Kevin Carroll. I will let Kevin Carroll tell you about himself. What I will tell you is I have known Kevin Carroll for nearly 25 years. He, as described on some of his former business cards, is a motivator. He's an innovator, a dreamer, a teacher, a visionary. He is a best-selling author, an expert on creativity and innovation, an agent for social change. He has given generously of his time to my students by Skyping into my classrooms from Portland, Oregon. We are so pleased to have him with us today. So please welcome home one of our own, Kevin Carroll.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening. My goodness. The energy is low up in here. Come on now. A hawk comes home, right? And that's like, good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much, right? This is a big moment for me. I don't get to come back here that often. I live all the way in Portland, Oregon. We affectionately call it Portlandia, Latte Land, Stumptown, the Rose City. We have lots of names for it, but one thing we do know is we love a good idea. Ideas are very important. Now, where did the good Dr. Tom go? So I'm going to share a few things. I was just with earnest listening to your remarks. You're so passionate about it, right? And you're leaning in, wanting people to lean in with you. I'm leaning in from the back, right? But I'm like, why aren't you all leaning in? He's dropping pearls of wisdom, knowledge. We're expecting you all to be the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers that are going to make the difference. So he's sharing this information with the hope that we can count on you. We're anxiously anticipating your arrival. And so these comments and the remarks and the things you were sharing were so powerful. And yes, I was a child who snuck into gyms. It is a Philly thing. And I think that I'll be able to echo a lot of what you were talking about just in my journey and my story. And so I'm going to share with you my story. I actually wrote something down to capture all that was going on in my life, and I'm going to take you through Cliff Notes version of my story and some videos that I have to talk about some of the work that I'm doing. I love to give out gifts, so you have to be paying attention, because if you ask a good question, you might get a gift. So that's how I entice them, the audience, to lean in and maybe want to participate. So is that fair? So I'll share it with you. I wrote this specifically for this moment. They chose their addiction over raising 3 sons. The pinnacle moment of my parents' neglect resulted in the 3 of us being rescued by a stranger, shuttled down to a Greyhound bus station in Bowling Green, Virginia, placed on a bus alone ages 8, 6, and 3, and sent on a 200-plus mile one-way fare to my grandparents' house in Philadelphia. Without parents in my life, I resorted to finding my life lessons from many sources: businessmen and laborers, winos and alcoholics, drug dealers and users, sports coaches, my peers, and old heads at the playground, merchants, war vets, school teachers, librarians, custodians, food service workers, other kids' moms and dads. I learned to be constantly on the lookout for any nugget of insider wisdom that would assist me on my quest to rise above my suffering and circumstances. Turning ideas into reality became my focus. I'll show you became my daily mantra. I spent endless hours at the neighborhood playground, school, and the public library. All these locales became my sanctuaries. Finding a way to rise above my circumstances and not let my circumstances dictate my destiny was my constant motivation. Preston Playground was the community epicenter. At that playground, an unimpressive pugilistic moment plus a peace offering of peanut butter and jelly proved to be the most important catalytic ingredients in my journey from a dysfunctional and hardscrabble life to success and a lifelong pursuit of significance. I stand before you living proof that anything is possible, that human potential is boundless and endless. I believe that there are 2 great days in a person's life: the day that you are born and the day that you discover why. 2 great days in a person's life: the day that you are born and the day that you discover why. And so the way that I got to my why was understanding this: you can't change where you're from, but you can change where you're going. You heard my story: hardscrabble, dysfunction, upheaval, 2 addict parents, abandoned, rescued by a stranger, put on a bus, 8, 6, and 3, one-way fare back to Philadelphia. It's the 1960s when this is happening. I like to tell people I'm well-preserved. I'm the Black Benjamin Button, in case y'all wanted to figure that out, right? So I'm well-preserved. You got that joke, right? You got that joke? Yeah, so it's the 1960s, civil rights movement is going on, turbulent, tumultuous times, very challenging times. Can you imagine 3 African-American boys abandoned down in the South? We're in trouble. We don't understand it because we're so young, but people are worried for us. This stranger, this woman, decides that she's going to take the phone call that I request her to do to my grandparents here in Philadelphia. She calls. I talk to my grandfather. He says he can't come and get us. He says, can I talk to the woman? They have a conversation. Next thing you know, she's taking us to the bus station. She's looking for the bus driver coming back to Philadelphia. The bus driver's white. She explains our circumstances to this bus driver. He could have easily said no. I remember so distinctly the bus driver nodding his head yes and beckoning us over. You boys are going to sit in one seat. You're not going to budge. You don't bring a peep. You don't make any noise. I'm going to get you boys back safely to Philadelphia. Do you boys understand me? Yes, sir. Scared to death. Huddle next to each other. 3 across in one seat. Can you imagine that today? That's not happening, is it, right? That's CNN headline breaking news. We're in the back smiling and waving, jet posing, right? It's trending. But it's a very different time, isn't it? So if the stranger doesn't say yes, if the bus driver doesn't say yes, I don't know what ends up happening to us because my mother doesn't check on us for another 2 weeks. She then calls my grandfather's house to ask, have you seen the kids? Yes, they're with us, and they're not coming back to you. 8, 6, and 3. And see, one of the things that I started to understand very early in my journey, because I have a crazy journey, eclectic journey, all these different things, lefts and rights and ups and downs and all the things, and how do you find a way to not see obstacles? How do you see opportunities? How do you find a way to rise above things? How do you find a way? See, I had all kinds of doubters. Individuals that said there is no way, Mr. and Mrs. Carroll, that these boys are going to amount to much at all, but do the best you can. Can you imagine overhearing that at 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old from social workers coming and checking on you? That's what I was overhearing at the top of the steps. That's where I'll show you. Well, as a child, I would say, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. You don't know me. I'll show you. See, all three of us ended up doing really well. My older brother, Donnie's retired Navy 22 years, lives in Mobile, Alabama. He works in nursing. My younger brother, Kyle, he's an IT specialist in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But my journey took a whole different trajectory that no one could have ever anticipated, and it had to do with choices. I had to make a lot of very, very tough choices at a very young age. No mom, no dad. Where am I going to get that wisdom, that insight to help me navigate the world? Preston Playground. That crazy, eclectic community of people that I listed for you, from drug dealers and drug users, from businessmen and laborers, from the parents of my friends. I wanted it from anyone. When I went to school, it was the front office people, the custodians, the food service people. When I went to Ludington Library right up on Lancaster Avenue, that was my library. I got my library card. I'll tell you a story about that because it was a very special place. These were the places and the people that helped me and assisted me. They're all a part of me. They're my mosaic. I am a piece of all those people, but I had to make a lot of tough choices. And then a ball entered my life. See, I like to say a ball saved my life. Preston Playground was that place. And so we all have our recollection of a kickball, dodgeball, four square. Some of us don't have necessarily really good recollection because you weren't quick or agile or nimble. I was quick, agile, and nimble. I could dodge, duck, dive, and dodge. If you've seen the movie, you get that. But this ball, I like to say, saved my life. See, this ball allowed me to do something that I desperately wanted. See, the ball allowed me to have this catalytic moment. See, because of that community and all those individuals in there, I got a chance to connect. I got a chance to belong. Isn't that what we all want, is to belong and be a part of something? And sports did that for me. But I had no idea that it was going to create something very different. See, I started to understand the power of sports in the fact that I was connected. So I never really worried about a trophy or a medal or first place. It was always about belonging and being a part of something. This is our 5th and 6th grade football team from Coopertown Elementary School. So I have to give you a little caveat about my brothers and I. We're very different. So here I am, well preserved. My brothers look very much their age. Full beards, chest, back hair, the whole deal. I barely shave, been the same height and weight since high school. Got no idea what happened. So you'll notice in the picture there, I'm circled, that I'm number 55. My older brother Donnie is standing in the back row. He's number 49. He's only a year older than me. Look at the disparity in our height. So I played football. I played soccer. I ran track, ice hockey, lacrosse, basketball, you name it, I played it. I went to Haverford High School. I snuck into Haverford School. That was the place that I would sneak in the summer and also in the winter. When I got tired of shoveling the blacktop and it was cold out, but I never let my friends know. And it'll be a really interesting story about why the Haverford School became very important to me in my life. I told you about that community. That community poured into me hopes and possibility and dreams, that I could rise above my circumstances. That community taught me that haters are my motivators. They taught me that. I started to understand that I'll show you. I'll show you that I can do things. And I got my library card at Ludington Library at 9 years old. That was a really, really amazing moment for me because the first book I ever took out of the library, Where the Wild Things Are. Come on, don't act like you don't know that book. That book set me off. I thought that book was magical. It was so amazing. And I started to realize that reading books makes you better. And I fell in love with my schoolwork. And I fell in love with reading. And I'd spend hours at that library. So they predated, the librarians there were actually giving me recommendations and had books sitting on the shelf for me when I would come in. They knew that I was coming in by myself. So they wrapped their arms around me. I like to call them the divas of the Dewey Decimal. You have to be from a certain era to know the Dewey Decimal System too, right? But these ladies loved me up. They were amazing at Ludington Library. And that book really allowed me to understand why reading books makes you better. And then peanut butter and jelly enters my life. Now, I mentioned that in my little remarks that I read off. I got in a fight with a new kid. His name is Norman Lane. Norman Lane's about my height. The rules have changed. See, Jeff knows how this is in Darby Township, right? You're gonna get a fair one, right? You're gonna have a little scrap with somebody to see if they're tough enough. So this is the new rules, right? So they size us up. Kev, you gotta fight the new guy. I'm like, I'm not fighting him. I don't even know him. They said, well, if you two don't fight, we're gonna beat you both up. That's not very fair. They said, well, that's the way it is now. So I look at this new guy and I said, well, I guess we gotta fight. He said, it's okay. We have this scrap. It's not some amazing pugilistic moment. Everybody walks away. We're covered in dirt. And he looks at me and says, hey, want to come to my house for peanut butter and jelly? That was his peace offering. That simple act of generosity from Norman Lane turned into a 46-year-long friendship. But not with Norman, with his mom, Miss Lane. Miss Lane became my mom. But more importantly, Miss Lane became my CEO. My chief encouragement officer of my dreams. We all need a Miss Lane, someone who encourages you and holds you accountable for your fanciful, crazy, radical ideas. Miss Lane, Miss Lane, Miss Lane, they have this music program at school. I think I'm gonna try the cello. Why not would be her response. Miss Lane, they have a school play. I think it's Shakespeare. I wanna try it. Why not? Miss Lane, I'd always have an idea and Miss Lane would always follow up with why not? And then the next thing is I'm gonna check on you to see what you did with that idea. I learned about accountability at 9 years old. It wasn't enough to have an idea, you had to follow through. Miss Lane taught me this very simple truth. The distance between dreams and reality is called action. Don't talk about it, be about it, Kevin. Lots of talkers and very few doers. Which one are you? Don't talk about it, be about it. Lots of talkers and very few doers. Which one are you? See, that's your choice every day, isn't it? You have to recommit to the journey and the chase every single day. And Miss Lane taught me the importance of that at 9 years old, that it wasn't enough to be a talker. You had to have action behind that. And then you start to learn how to manifest something and turn things into reality. And it becomes more and more of a habit. And you get better and better at it. Oh, sorry. Positivity. I started to understand that I had to find a way to push back at people who said bouncing that ball, chasing that dream will get you nowhere. So that's where I started to understand this idea of haters and half a peace sign, as I like to call it. They get a half a peace sign, right? Because I couldn't really give them the middle finger, so it was half a peace sign. You guys didn't know that, did you? That's a new one for you. You can jot that down. The young ladies back there typing stuff, you can put that in there. Half a peace sign, yeah. So think about this. You can't accomplish anything without positivity. You have to believe. You have to advance. Every single day, you have to recommit to the thing you're chasing. You get a blank slate, a tabula rasa, every single morning, and you start again, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. See, my grandfather taught me about positivity because when he lost his wife when I was 10, and my grandfather's now raising 3 boys on his own, he started a ritual with us. It was a way of starting the day in a positive manner. My grandfather would be tapping the ground when he would wake us up. Boys, it's time to get up. We'd always know the routine. We'd say the same thing, pop up. Why are you touching the ground? Why are you tapping the ground? Because you're above this and not below it. It's a pretty good day. The next thing my grandfather would say is, how's your want to today, boys? And we'd have to respond back, pop up. My want to is good. He said, that's right. You can't do anything with a broke want to. You got to want to be better, got to want to be unique, got to want to make your ideas real. Now get on out there. So how's your want to? You got to check that every day. Nothing's going to be handed to you. There's lots of people in here, as Dr. Tom said really affectionately, there's a lot of OGs in here with a lot of wisdom to share. They might be your professors or your instructors. They could be someone that is a motivator and encourager, a CEO in your life. Be present when they're talking with you. Heed what they're sharing with you. It could be that one nugget to be the catalyst to tip you in favor in a positive way. So you start to put all these things together, right? The ball, books, betterment, and it really changes my life. Those ingredients of the ball, book, and betterment allow me to turn ideas into reality. Because of a ball, book, and betterment, I got a bachelor's degree in speech communication and sports medicine. I got a master's degree from here at St. Joe's University in health education in 1995. I got a chance to be in the Air Force for 10 years. And I was a language translator. I speak 5 languages, Serbian, Croatian, Russian, German, and Czech. Now, mind you, I dropped Spanish after 5 minutes in high school. And I still remember that 5 minutes. Esta sala en casa, no en la cocina. Donde está en la sala? No en la cocina. And I walked out of class. Had somebody held me in there, I would have Spanish in my arsenal also. But Serbian, Croatian, Russian, I'm a black man from Philadelphia. What am I going to do with those languages? So I'm upset that they wouldn't give me something that I thought was usable. I had no idea that my Air Force experience was going to come in handy when I started becoming an athletic trainer and working. So this idea of sneaking into buildings, my very first job was the Haverford School, the place that I used to sneak in as a child. Can you imagine I go to my interview and I walk into the office, it's the room I used to sneak in. The window's right behind the athletic director's desk. He says, hey, Kevin, welcome. First of all, they thought I was white and Irish, Kevin Carroll, right? So I walk in and they're startled. And then the conversation goes, hey, are you familiar? I said, yeah, actually I am. I grew up in the neighborhood and I used to sneak in that window right behind you. He says, what do you mean? I said, I bet they never fixed it. I got up, I walked out. I got a stick just like I used to as a kid. Shook, 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 pop, pop the window open. His mouth drops. I walk back in, Jack McMullen, I'll never forget. He tosses me the key, says, you'll never have to do that again. But then he says, you'll be the first faculty member of color in the history of this school. 1990. Some of the parents won't let you touch their kids. But I think you're going to find a way to connect. And I'm still connected to so many of the young men that I met at the Haverford School. And then that became Episcopal Academy. And then that became St. Joseph's University. In 2 years, I found myself here. There's a gentleman in the back there, Don DeJulia, who was the person who took a chance on me. He saw my crazy, eclectic background and experiences, knew that I didn't have a lot of experience necessarily as an athletic trainer yet, but he thought I could connect with the student athletes here. In his infinite risk-taking and courage, he found a way to avail to me an opportunity. And Don is one of my catalysts. Don is absolutely one of my CEOs, my chief encouragement officers, because he believed in me. When I didn't really think, I actually thought I was going to get the assistant role here. And I got the head athletic trainer position. And that happened to turn into an opportunity to work with the 76ers, because they were practicing here, and I would help them out from time to time. One thing leads to another, and I become only the third African-American head athletic trainer in the history of the NBA for my hometown team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Now I want to take you back to 10 years old. I'm in the middle of a basketball game, Preston Playground. I scream, I'm going to be in the NBA one day. Psh, you are vertically challenged. That is not going to happen. No, no. I name a couple short players from back in the day. Nate, Tiny, Archibald, Calvin. Psh, never going to happen. Fast forward to 1995, I get this job. Guess who's calling me for tickets? Yo, Kev, can you hook us up with a ticket? Yeah, remember that thing you said when I was 10? No tickets for you. So I'm on the bench with Allen Iverson, Jerry Stackhouse, a host of other people. And a moment happens where I get to use my languages that I didn't anticipate, an unexpected moment. So the head coach is John Lucas. He has put together this crazy, eclectic, dysfunctional team of players. He's going to rehabilitate as many of them as possible because they're all misfit players from the NBA. We're the overpaid, traveling, dysfunctional family, all season long, losing game after game, but Coach Lucas is saving souls. One night, we're playing against the Charlotte Hornets, and some of you all know this name, Vlade Divac. Vlade Divac is from the former Yugoslavia, 7 feet tall, if you're not familiar with his name, and he played in the NBA for a long time. He's now the Sacramento Kings general manager. On this night, he's in the zone, as they call it in sports, where he's not missing a shot and talking trash. Every time he comes by our bench about, you guys stink, put everybody on me, I don't care, I'm gonna beat you by myself. And the coach is getting upset, and he's yelling to me about the timeout situation, because I'm in charge of that as the head athletic trainer. So I yell back, we got 2 timeouts, coach, 2 timeouts. He says, we need to stop this guy, but I don't want to use a timeout. So he's pacing up and down, Vlade's talking trash, the cacophony, one of my favorite words, great SAT word, right? Diminutive is my other word. I learned that both in 3rd grade, never have forgotten those, right? I was no longer small, I was diminutive from that point on. Not small, I'm diminutive. So, all this is going on, crazy bedlam, right? The coach is screaming at me, right? Timeout situation, and then he stops. Vlade says an insult, the coach is standing perfectly aligned, and he looks back at me, he looks out at Vlade, he looks back at me, he says, wait a minute, hey Carroll, don't you speak that big guy's language? I'm like, yeah. He says, okay, he'll never expect this. Why don't you say something about his mom or dad or sister or brother and try to distract him during the game? I'm like, what are you talking about? No, no, no. He'll never expect it from you. So just, distract him and see if we can get him distracted. I'll come up with a better defense and I don't have to use a timeout. So can you imagine, this is the request of my head coach, in the middle of an NBA basketball game, that I'm supposed to insult a 7-foot-tall man in his native tongue. So we're arguing about this moment, right? And he says, you need to be a team player, Carroll. Come on, help us out. Fine. So, mind you, I had 2 weeks of obscenities training in the military. I can tell your mama jokes in Serbian to crush you. So I start talking to him as he's running by our bench. First his mom, then his dad, then his sister, then his brother, all in Serbian. Vlade keeps glancing at our bench like, who is saying? So he stops in the middle of the game, starts storming towards our bench, screaming, who was insulting my family in Serbia? And the coach steps at that little guy right there. And I look up at him and go, Dobar dan, kako ste vi gospodine? He's like, what? Whole rest of the game, can't make a shot, can't do anything right. He's staring at me every time he comes by the bench. Coach is high-fiving me, great job, Carroll. I said, yeah. I don't think he's happy. He says, no, I don't think he's happy either. The game ends and Vlade doesn't even go to his locker room. He storms into our locker room looking for me. Where is that little guy at? Where is that little guy? Everybody's like, he's back there, he's back there, he's back there. And I'm bracing for the worst possible moment, right? I'm thinking this is not gonna turn out well. You. Because he's 7 feet tall would be like that, right? You. Never thought I'd meet a you. The Yugoslavian national basketball team just qualified for the '96 Olympic Games in Atlanta. We're looking for a sports medicine liaison and a translator. You're perfect. So I traveled with the Yugoslavian national basketball team for the '96 Olympic Games, their pre-Olympic tour. The NBA does a special story about me because it's an unusual story, right? A black man from Philadelphia speaks fluent Serbian, is helping out the Yugoslavian national basketball team, and someone from Nike sees the story. And I get a phone call out of the blue. Hey, we saw this great story about you, and wow, we loved your energy and all the things that you've done, and we're wondering if you would ever consider joining Nike. And I said, well, what would I do? They said, we're not sure, but we want you. Would you take a risk? So here's this opportunity. I'm a single father at this point. I'm raising my 2 sons on my own. I'll raise them for 15 years. I'm on the road with these big kids. I'm away. I have 2 sitters that I'm juggling. When I come back each time, there's a trophy on the mantle, an A on the refrigerator, but I wasn't there. See, in my own way, I felt like I was repeating history. I was absent. I didn't like that feeling. Lots of conversations with people, what do you think I should do? Well, why don't you take a risk? See, I started to understand this idea of courage. Courage is shown in acts, not in words. It's not bluffing, arrogance, or madness. A courageous man or woman is the one who dares to do what he or she finds is right and bears the consequences of his or her acts, whether they be political, social, or individual. So I had to take a leap of faith. I had to be courageous. And I took Nike up on this offer. No job title, no functionary, had no idea where I was going to work. Here's the salary, move out to Portland, Oregon. 1997, I move out there. I get to create my own role at Nike. I become a Katalyst. I changed the C to a K because of Kevin. So most of you should remember what a catalyst is. Anybody remember what a catalyst is? Somebody, quickly, someone. As my grandmother said, don't let your shyness starve you. Put your hand up if you know, what is it? Inhibits? Who said encourage? Of course you know, because you're smart like that. Got a suit on, looking good. It's someone not only that inhibits, it advances, right, or accelerates, right, or affects change, correct? Like that you got a P on your hat there, right? That's a good move, that's a good move. So you get something. Booker ball. Done and done. Hope you can catch. I hope I can throw. My man, you got to get up and move for that. See, look, you got the dean getting up. That is not a good move right there. The dean and I have a very special rapport, just so you know. So, a catalyst is an excitatory agent that speeds up or changes a process. It helps others turn ideas into reality. What I was doing was recreating Preston Playground, a place that was inviting and welcoming, that everyone had to participate. I was recreating this moment where I understood that all of us could add and amplify on something. We all could participate, and that was the whole idea. And I got a chance to do lots of things, but at Nike, they had this idea called Nike Moments. Moments that affect the organization in a way that's profound. I got a chance to participate in some unique moments there. But one of them is one that people still talk about. I got 3,000 people to play tag for 3 hours because I thought we weren't playing enough as an organization. We were talking about it and putting out ads, but we weren't playing. So I challenged them. Now, you remember toilet tags? Anybody remember toilet tag? Right, when you got tagged, you had to squat, put your arm up and scream, "Flush me, somebody flush me." They pull your arm down and you run. You guys don't remember toilet tag, tunnel tag, turtle tag, there's all kind of tag. 3,000 people playing tag. It became such a moment that our advertising agency asked me to come down and talk to them about play. Why did I think it was important for the organization to reawaken play? And I told them about plays as important to you as eating, drinking, or sleeping. Physiologically, if you deprive yourself of playful moments, bad things happen. Deleterious effects. It affects your psyche, your energy, your ability to turn ideas into reality. The more that I started to understand play, I started identifying other people that I wanted to connect with that were basically catalysts in their own right using play in sports. And they said, "This is brilliant. We want to do an ad around this." So they actually did an ad campaign around play, and one of the ads became one of the top ads in the world. So I want to share with you this ad called Tag. So that ad was the #1 ad when it came out in 2001. And then over that decade, they actually voted on what were the top ads in the world. And that ad was voted as one of the top ads in the world, top 5. A simple act, a simple moment at Nike turned into something much grander and much bigger. And I started to understand that play is serious business. And that play is serious in the business of advancing ideas. If you want more innovation, better problem solving, more ingenuity, more abstract thinking, bring more play in it. It needs to have purpose behind it. It shouldn't just be play for play's sake. Do that on your own time. But if you're trying to advance something, you need to have intention behind it and have ideas and what we're trying to do together. And so I started to understand more and more this idea of play. And I love this quote: "You can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation." So Dr. Tom, you talked about teams and belonging and connecting, all these things I related, I understood, right? And then the whole idea of the multicultural team, right? The diverse team, and how we start to understand from each other. We learn from each other. It's so powerful when you do that. It's the same thing I've seen in corporate America, that people will reveal their true self when they're playing. They surrender to it. It's an unconscious act. Because it takes over, your focus becomes that, but people will show you if they're selfish or they're generous. If they're team players or they're in no way leaders. And that's what I really truly believe about this quote, that it's so beautiful. You can discover more about a person in 1 hour of play than in a year of conversation. So I had this idea that I wanted to see if I could advance this idea. So I wanted to bring brand new soccer balls and basketballs and playground balls with me, because I started to see, as I traveled or my friends were traveling, that a lot of communities couldn't afford a ball. And I knew a ball was really significant in my life. So I wondered what would happen if I actually started gifting play in the form of a ball to communities around the world, and my friends were doing it. So we actually started taking this idea of a ball can change the world, this idea that a ball having great impact. And we traveled to lots of different places. Got to go to places like Uganda, and you'd see in India, or the Northern Territory, the outback of Australia. And so I have this ball collection from around the world that numbers well over 150. It's actually become an art exhibit that traveled for the last 2 years. And one of the things that I really, truly understand is we all speak ball. It's a language. You can connect with someone simply through the act of gifting a ball. It's an easy thing to do. You gift someone play, you're instantly connected because every single one of us in this room has a play history. Some of the people that you probably associate with, you met at recess back in grade school. And now you're connected to that same personality here at college. You just didn't attribute it to it, but that's what it is. I'll say it again, play is serious business. So as you start to see these images, this is a takra ball, wicker ball from Indonesia. Just think about play and a ball. This is a water balloon ball from Mexico, ball made of socks from Brazil. This is a trash bag ball from Kenya. The kids had no string, so one of them came up with a solution. There's an old tire. I'm going to peel the tire rubber down really thin, and I'll make string out of tire rubber to hold the trash bags together. Trash bag ball from Mozambique. And this one I say is the most ingenious of my collection. This is a banana fiber ball from Uganda made out of fibers from a tree. This ball is so clever. When you're playing with it, you want to know when the game is over, the ball disintegrates, it's gone. You want to waterproof that ball, you put it in a plastic bag and you tie it up. In its simplicity, it's genius. But in its necessity, it's about connecting and belonging. I'll say it again, we all speak ball, and play is serious business. And I've had a chance to travel the world and meet other people, because I had this idea that there has to be other people who believe in this. So I've had a chance to meet some amazing global game changers, people who believe that a ball can change the world. But I have a story, and I think it's really relatable to your early remarks. And it talks about the power of sport and the athlete activist. So I got a chance to hear Archbishop Desmond Tutu talk about Nelson Mandela and his effort to rally South Africa at the Rugby World Cup in 1995. He told the story before the movie Invictus actually came out. So I'm sitting at the feet of Archbishop Desmond Tutu in Cape Town, South Africa, and he's sharing the story with a small group of us. And it's so amazing that he comes on stage and he starts talking about that I didn't believe that sports was that powerful. And Nelson Mandela kept trying to rally everyone that I think we can affect the country this way. And he was saying, Archbishop Tutu, no, we should preach forgiveness. And so he's going and doing his thing, and Nelson Mandela is rallying everybody around that, and then he witnesses in the stadium everyone screaming his name when he walks out in the Springbok jersey, which is the most clear symbol of apartheid, the Springbok team, the South African rugby team, that jersey, that symbol. And it was so beautiful, because sometimes I can channel him, so I'm going to see if I can get it. Had I known that all I needed was a ball and a jersey, I could have saved myself thousands of sermons. He realized, thank you, Brent, he realized that that was powerful. Because when he saw Nelson Mandela walk into the stadium and he said they were screaming his name, Mandela, Mandela, all shades of people in that country. A ball can change the world. But here's my challenge to all of you. How will you be a global game changer? See, we all have the opportunity. I made a decision to leave Nike in 2004 to join forces with other people who believed that they could advance the human condition with their passion, their purpose, and their intention. Mine just happened to be around sports and play. And I've had a chance to partner with individuals all over the world. There's a young lady here who works with the Eagles Charitable Foundation now, right? Like that I got that, right? I study up, Rach. You know how I am, right? I do my homework real quick. So Rachel is an amazing human catalyst. If you get a chance to ask her some questions, she does great work for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I met her in Cape Town, in Chicago, and she was a part of this global gathering of game changers, people who believed that they could change the world using sports and play. I wanted to be a part of that. So for the last 12 years, that's what I've been doing, is affecting and assisting and doing my part. There's a beautiful quote, my actions may seem small, but their collective impact will be great. Our actions may seem small, but their collective impact will be great. Do your part. Do your part to advance the human condition. It doesn't matter your age. I know 9-year-olds with their own nonprofits. 9-year-olds that collect sports equipment and send it to US soldiers all around the world to gift to children. A 9-year-old got that idea. See, you all can do your part. It's never too early to be a global game changer. And that should be everyone's aspiration, to do our part. Our actions may seem small, but their collective impact can be great. So there's some simple truths, some simple lessons I've learned from around the world that I wanted to share with you all to really start to think about how you can advance this idea of being a global game changer and have your own social impact. So I'm going to share these with you all. This first idea is the eye. Eyes of a child, eyes of wonder, eyes of possibility. There's a terrible malady, an affliction that's affecting everyone around the world. I'm going to demonstrate to you. I call it the adult posture. See, we need to look up every once in a while. We need to shift our gaze. We need to change our perspective, right? We have to start to understand that curiosity is at a premium. I love this quote from Albert Einstein. I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. I have one look-up day per week. I spend more time looking up than looking at a screen. I believe that this screen called life, which is in HD and 3D, what? Blown my mind. Look up every once in a while. There's a lot of answers just around you. They're not on the small screens. But you have to make a choice to be present. You have to be curious. When you were young, and the young at heart, you were always putting content on your hard drive, which is your brain. You were collecting content daily as a child and placing it on your hard drive, your brain. Why would you stop being in beta, always improving, getting better? Shouldn't we treat ourselves that way? That we're always trying to improve and get better? Curiosity is the way you do that. Every single day is a new start. It's a new opportunity to get to the light bulb, which is ideas. We all have a vast amount of ideas, a vast amount of opportunities, but you can't do anything without that chase. And the chase represents energy. You got to take good care of yourselves. You have to have the requisite energy to pursue your dreams and goals and aspirations. Every single day you have to recommit. Do I have the requisite energy to get after that today? Because as my grandfather said, you got this, and this is all that's promised to you is today. What will you do with it? You need to wring the day out till there's nothing left of it. And that comes with your energy. If you have the right energy, you can advance an idea. And each and every one of us needs to be reminded, the baby with the barbell. Anything is possible. Human potential is boundless and endless. I've witnessed it all over the world, but my story is proof of that. That my circumstances were not going to dictate my destiny. That I was going to find a way to have impact, to affect others, to use my story as a catalyst. And the more that I started to understand that, I was willing to do the lonely work. That's the boxing gloves. Muhammad Ali said I'd either won or lost that fight before I entered the ring. Are you willing to do the lonely work? The work of a champion. No kudos, no accolades, no attaboys, no pats on the back are coming your way. You just trust and believe that hard work never goes unrewarded. Are you willing to do your human homework? That's the work on yourself. To be better, to aspire, to work at your craft, and have intention every single day. If you're willing to do that, then I'm here to tell you, we'll never see obstacles. We'll only see opportunities. There won't be anything that'll get in your way. And if you're willing to do that lonely work, then you're willing to maximize every single day, and that's the dollar bill sign. You're gifted something every day when you see the light of day. It comes in the form of seconds. You're gifted 86,400 seconds worth of opportunity to advance your idea, your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations. 86,400 seconds. If you valued each of those seconds like they were worth $1, and you looked at that as $86,400, would you waste any of that? You wouldn't, would you? But we all know the saying, don't we? Time is what? Money. So why would you waste those precious seconds? Those seconds that you were gifted each morning. There's a reason it's called the present. It is a gift. My grandfather reminded us, right? You're above this and not below it. That's a pretty good day. So maximize the day, but you can't do anything alone, and that's the handshake. I love the fact, Dr. T, man, see? Look, your name is just getting reduced if you notice that, right? You're going to be OG by the end, right? Touch. He talked about touch. that is one of the most powerful moments, because it is a symbiotic thing. It's the give-get. But the handshake, can I tell you how few people understand the 21 rule? Especially the young people in here. Do you know the 21 rule? 2 eyes, 1 hand? 21, right? When I shake your hand, I better give you my 2 eyes and the hand, my grandfather said. If I don't see your eyes and I see the top of your head, I know you're hiding something. You give me the limp fish and you don't make it memorable, why would I want to remember you? So you need to shake someone's hand and look them in the eye. That could be a catalyst. That could be a connection. That could be someone who it helps advance you. You will not be able to do it alone. It takes a whole community to advance ideas. You will never do it alone. So if we're starting to think about that and reaching out to other people, then we need to be reminded of this. Our ideas and our actions matter. And that's the idea of the starfish. My grandmother taught us something starting at 6 years old, and I've never stopped practicing this. Every single day I do one random act of kindness. She challenged us starting at 6 years old. Do a kind thing for someone. It will always come back. And she would check in at the end of the day. Did you do your kind act today? And we'd have to basically give a report, what we did, for a family member or a stranger. One kind act. Can you imagine if all of us in here made that intention, and by the end of this week we did a kind act, the impact that would have on the community here or where you live? If we all put that in motion, and then you actually encourage someone else to do that. See, that's the way that we're going to advance others, is the collective energy and collective impact of individuals here and beyond. We need to rally around this if we're going to solve these problems. It's going to take the collective energy of all of us. But most importantly, the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers in this room. I'll say it again, we're anxiously awaiting your arrival. And all of you can contribute to advance the human condition in your own way. But you need to know what you're passionate about. You need to know what your purpose is. You need to know what your intention is. You need to know what your red rubber ball is. What are you chasing? Every day you need to know what you're chasing. And if you know that, then you can dream as big as you want. And I believe there's 5 ingredients to any dream: dedication, responsibility, education, attitude, and motivation, DREAN. You have to be dedicated to anything you want. Don't talk about it, be about it. Take responsibility. That's that accountability thing. The distance between dreams and reality is called action. The E, education. Lifelong learning is when it needed and necessary. Do your human homework on you, first and foremost. And then do the homework that's asked of you to advance your ideas, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. Your attitude. You get what you give. You got a nasty attitude, guess what you're getting back. You got a good attitude, you attract that energy. And you got to stay motivated, because no dream is microwavable. Never going to happen overnight. All those people that were hating on me, bouncing that ball will get you nowhere, look what happened. But I had others rally around me. I had believers. I shed those people who were hating. I found a way to maximize my potential. But now I'm doing that work for others. And I'm using sports and play as the vehicle for that. It's the way that I convene people, and then I talk about education, social issues, gender issues, conflict issues. You talked about the athlete activist Didier Drogba from Ivory Coast got a truce in his warring nation after the African Cup of Nations when Ivory Coast won, and he was being interviewed after the great victory, and he grabbed the microphone and said, "Put down your weapons." We as a nation should be rallying. This is a great moment for the Ivory Coast. Put down your weapons. In that moment, he realized the opportunity of his voice and his movement, and he started a movement. And they put down their weapons. Even for just a little while, he made an impact. He saw the platform that he had, and he utilized it. Shabazz Napier, all the other individuals that you know, that's what they were doing. They seized an opportunity. Don't think you have a voice that matters. You do. Dedication, responsibility, education, attitude, and motivation. I've had a chance to make my voice and heard and out there through 3 books. That was my first one, that's my second one, that's my third one. I'll go back to the fact that my first book would have never happened if I had listened to the haters. They said my book was over-designed and too creative. The publishers told me that. I self-published it. It took off. ESPN, signed me to a book deal. That was part of why I left Nike in 2004, because I got a book deal with ESPN and Disney. But had I listened to the people that said, bouncing that ball, chasing that dream will get you nowhere, it doesn't happen. We have to find ways to push back. So keep your eyes open. Look up every once in a while. Know that all of us have amazing ideas at our disposal, but we need energy to manifest them. Anything truly is possible, the baby with the barbell moment, but you gotta be willing to do the lonely work. That's the boxing gloves, right? I'd either won or lost that fight before I entered the ring. You're gifted 86,400 seconds every single day. What will you do with that gift? We can't do it alone. 21 is the way that you should start that, building your community of encouragers. Let's do one kind act. I challenge all of you to do that. And you know, the good professor, Trice, she loves following up on stuff. So if you're in her class, she's gonna check. Love that about you, Steph. I love that. Recognize that you can dream as big as you want. I'm standing before you living proof that anything truly is possible, that human potential is boundless and endless, that we will not be defined by our circumstances, that greatness awaits every single one of us in this room, if you so choose to embrace that idea and be audacious enough to think that you can, in your own way, be great. There's a beautiful quote from James Michener that I will leave you all with. And it really talks about blurring the lines between work and play. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. See, to him, he's always doing both. And shouldn't that be our quest? To find joy in every endeavor that we participate in, and we absolutely find a way to find play and fun in what we're doing? Because there's a great gypsy saying, my future is getting shorter. So why wouldn't you embrace the opportunity and really, really live the life that you have? I really, truly appreciate all of you. This is my own personal hashtag. Everybody should have their own personal hashtag. This is mine, GSD. It's a G-rated room, so it's get stuff done, but you know what it really is. Understood? I live by that. You should have your own personal hashtag, and you should sign off with your hashtag. Stop using everybody else's and let people know that you're here and you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Are we good? Are we good? Yes. So we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, but I have a really quick thing. Is anybody's birthday in August in here? Oh, yeah, here we go. Jeff, you don't count, because I already know your birthday in August. If your birthday is in August and it's past the 15th, keep your hand up. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's so nice. Lady in the back. Hey, computer girl. What's happening? We were standing there having a little quick chat. Told her I was leaning over. And you. So, these are my gifts for August. My birthday's in August also. There is August envy now in the room. So, first of all, Brent, I told you there will be something that I would give to you. This is for your son. So I think this is important that we started off the right way. So you will absolutely have that for him.
You could have thrown it to me.
I know, but that's okay. But I was a little worried. If you would be in charge and give these to the August people, right? Now I'm going to watch, because I see some of you like, man, I could put my hand up. So everybody up there, is anybody's birthday August 31st? Yours is? August 31st? My man. Come on now. Wait, I got to take care of you, because that's my birthday. So here, these are for all the other people. Make sure you get one. There should be enough there. All right, if not, I got to go see my fellow August 31st. It's probably not good for the camera people, but I'm sorry. So I got to go see this man over here, because, you know, August 31st is no joke. Come on, right? Done? What is your name?
Ryan.
Ryan, it's nice to meet you. You are from now on known as 831. My man. Done and done. Done, Lucia. You're just good people. So, I think that, did everybody get their book? Did we take care of them? There should be a couple up there. Are we good? Did you get yours? Are we good? Are we good? I think that worked out. Oh, wait, my computer friend? She didn't get hers? What? Wait, no. I have something better. If you give me your address, I'm going to send you a little care package. How about that? There'll be more than one book in it. What do you think? Is that fair? Can we handle that? Put down your details and get them to me. Done. Are we good? Are we good? Yes. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Brief Q&A.
All right, so we have a moment for some brief Q&A. So, at St. Joseph's University, we like to say being men and women with and for others. But I think we've added a few words to that, right? So we've learned about touching, looking up, connecting. We all speak ball, right? So there are just many ways to kind of activate our mission. So keep that in mind. So if there are a few people who'd like to come to either microphone, to your left or your right, if you have a question for either speaker, all right.
Oh, the Katalyst. It's the Katalyst.
This is for Mr. Casey. So I was wondering what you thought, like, for the classroom setting in college. Do you think play would be better utilized there for learning?
Yes, but you have to have instructors who are willing to do that, right? And there's always this idea of gravitas, right, in the classroom, right? It is to be very worldly and thinking, but you also have this opportunity, if you want to be engaging as a lecturer, as an instructor, as a professor, right? I think you have to find a way to connect, and you have to do it in your own way, right? And it can be playful in your own way. I think it has to have a level of playfulness and sophistication. But I think if you create those kinds of environments, you'll be the sought-after instructor, professor, right? The person that everyone wants to take that class. And I think if all of us, as instructors, we're actually trying to strive for the Dead Poet Society moment, right? My captain, people stand on their chairs, right? They're so thrilled to learn. Yeah. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be, you guys would be engaged every day, wouldn't you? I can't make that promise of every instructor, lecturer, professor, but there's a dean in here, right, that's thinking about that, like, yeah, maybe make sure my people are doing that, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that you all can also talk to them, right? Implore them. Let them know that we would be even more engaged learners if we could have a bit of playfulness in here. Whatever that form that takes in your way, but I think it would be important. You'd probably show up to class on time, be early, in fact, right? Done and done. Thank you, Katalyst.
Thank you.
Okay. What else? Anyone else?
I'll do it, but I talk loud enough that I don't need to go down for microphone, to be honest with you. What are your three most influential books that you've read? Either one.
All right, Dr. Crosset, your three most influential books that you have ever read.
Coates' book that's just out is
Microphone?
just read.
Microphone?
And then, you know what I'm reading? You know what a better question is what I'm reading right now? What have I read just recently? I'm reading To Kill a Mockingbird right now. You know why? Because I didn't read it in the 8th grade. You know, I flunked 8th grade English, 7th grade English. And Coates' book, which we just read, over the summer, I think that really changed the way I felt about so many people in my life. Right? I'm thinking back about my college days, and I think the most important thing I learned, probably in graduate school, it's not so much what I read, but how I learned to read, and to sit with other students and be able to take a paragraph and take a chapter and take a scholar and say, what were they trying to say right here? So whether it's Karl Mannheim or Karl Marx or Max Weber, it was the process of learning and reading and the discussions that followed that were so important.
And I think for young people, it's really important that you understand that you're not going to remember your professors that well. Maybe Trice, right? maybe Smith. But who you're going to remember are your peers. And that's who you're going to learn from. And so it's the process, I think, that's so important.
My three, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, required reading of all dreamers. Required reading. Beautiful book. The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. Many of you might be familiar with the movie Hugo. That's actually what the movie is based off of, and I learned about that book from a 12-year-old. And it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen. And the 12-year-old said, you need to read this book, and this is before the movie came out. I think there's a movie inside it. So as an adult, I'm looking for a DVD. And he said, no, I knew you'd do that. You need to read the book. It reads like a movie. And it is so beautifully illustrated, but the surprises of where the words come, where you expect it to be an image, and how the images actually build. So they're sequential, so you have to keep looking at each image because there's detail in every single image. And The Precious Present by Spencer Johnson. It's a beautiful, short little parable about being in the moment and living in the moment. And I actually learned about that from Pat Riley. He gave that out to every free agent that he would sign when he was with the Lakers, and continues that practice today with the Miami Heat. When he signs you, he always presents that to you, and he said, I need you to be present. Read this little parable. It talks about the role and value of being in the moment. And he says, we need you to be where you are. But it takes a lot of discipline and energy to do that. So those are my three faves: The Alchemist, The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and The Precious Present. But I got like a whole treasure trove of other stuff, but I'm just throwing out them quick pearls for you. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We'll make that the official conclusion of tonight's program. So I'm glad to see so many folks out, and please remember to join us tomorrow if you can. Thank you very much. Take care.
Hey, man, so it's no big deal, right?